Hi everyone. I wanted to invite you to another one of my altars that I have in my home. I call this my High Priestess altar. It has evolved over the last year or two into becoming my altar devoted to the earth and devoted to my ancestors and devoted to these concepts of the soil and the underworld and the transformative power within the heroine's journey. So this beautiful piece I found in an antique store in Grand Rapids, and it's a carved log of a goddess, and she sort of started the formation of my altar. I found her, I believe it was 2 years ago in June actually, and I have invited Saint Francis onto my altar as a patron because of our dedication to the earth spirits. And this, I've invited my ancestors. This is my the ancestor that I am the closest with. This is my great-grandfather on my paternal side. He died when I was 2. That's me. He's holding me. His name is Rebello Arcangeli, and you'll hear me talk about him more often as I evolve as a priestess and an artist. And his name in and of itself is the great decoder of our ancient roots in the Hermetic path. And my mother gave me the statue of the Dark Madonna, the Dark Goddess, which I think is really fabulous. And I printed a picture of the famous Venus of Botticelli, and she's holding up a truffle. So this also is an altar devoted to the fungus spirit. That's a very important part of my work that I will talk about in another video. And my great-grandmother, holding my son, is up here. She passed on about 3 years ago. And overall, it's an altar dedicated to the local spirits as well, where I live here in West Michigan. And this drawing that I have up here, if you can see the whole thing, it's finicky the way I have the phone set up, but is something I drew when I was 15. It's the Dome of the Rock. And it's a very sacred space over in the Middle East. And we're going to talk about that more in another video, but I drew this when I was 15, and it turns out this was the location of the ancient temples of the priestesses at one point in the history of antiquity. And so this means a lot to me. The table is a refurbished antique piece that my grandfather, he refurbished it with my grandmother years ago, and I was gifted this from my parents. So this is a really meaningful altar to my history, to my lineage, to my ancestry, and to my calling. So today, coming around full circle with our topic, I'm going to talk about the etymology of the Mass. And I think I've shared with you before that I studied linguistics in college, so I've been obsessed with etymology for a very, very long time. And because it helps us decode the historical passing of knowledge from one turn of the century to another, in a sense. And I wanted to talk about why I think it's so important to use the word Mass as I'll do a variety of ceremonies. I'm working up into that, but I don't want to call it anything else. And I will talk about why this is really important and why this word is so powerful to be reclaimed and repurposed and understood from its original origin. And the actual ceremony in and of itself it's a beautiful ceremony. It just needs to be cleansed, and it needs to be detoxified, it needs to be repurposed. So I wanted to go into some more detail about why I won't let go of the word Mass. So the word for Mass in Latin is missa, and it comes from the Persian-Mithraic word called mizd, which is a communion cake. And it's also a cognate with the word maza from Greek word. It's probably also a cognate with matzo from the Jewish culture, the Jewish cuisine. And matzah meant barley cake. So if you recall from our previous talk about castration in the bull, you may remember that during ancient history, certain men would castrate themselves to emulate the great life-giving source of menstruation of women. So over time, our ancestors evolved to sacrificing bull's testicles, or perhaps the entire animal, and place of human sacrifice, and which brought about Mithraism and the belief in the life-giving source of the bull's blood. And honestly, the Mithraism really was the complete usurpation of menstruation and becoming this male life force in and of itself. So then, to further confuse us, our ancestors evolved to making cakes and wine in place of eating the flesh of a sacrificed animal, which reflected how our societies were becoming and establishing really powerful agricultural way of being and harvesting the grain. So that was also an evolution of our food source. And so today's modern Eucharist is the ritual that maintains this ancient custom. So the Eucharist is also an ancient emulation of menstruation by the male priest caste, even to this day. If you absorb and follow the trail of the historical origins of the Eucharist within the context of a male-only priesthood, using it as a ritual to emulate menstruation, you'll begin to understand why women can't do the ceremony and why the Roman Catholic Church and the Orthodox Church have been so against women being priests. And this is, it turned into a form of oppression, but really what it is we, the ancient women, the priestesses, gave the men this ceremony to emulate menstruation so that they could come closer with their own life-giving source that they did not embody naturally in their own selves. So again, priestess house is the reclamation of the feminine as a complementary partner to the masculine counterpart. An apostolic succession of Mary Magdalene is the lineage of my priestesshood, and an apostolic succession of Jesus of Nazareth is the lineage of the priesthood within Christianity. So all in all, which is really kind of an exciting thing once you piece apart our history, men have been honoring women this whole time, but we've completely forgotten the origins of these very, very important ceremonies. So I'm here to remind you of these important origins. Also, Mass has a double meaning, so that's equally as beautiful in understanding our reconciliation with our past sins and our karmic footprint. So the word mittere in Latin means to dismiss or send, and that stem verb tense is mis. So missa, Mass, also means to dismiss one another at the conclusion of a liturgical prayer, at the conclusion of the ceremony. So here in one beautiful word, we are nourished with the sacrifice of our mother's blood and body, and we mimic that. That's her endometrium that we're mimicking, so that we can have life here on earth. And we're dismissed, renewed, and rejuvenated from her source nourishment to go out and serve one another. Wow. So think about that. It's a very popular meme right now, and it's important. It's important that we get back to this place. We can't give from an empty cup. So Mass in its true form in the light is a literal communion. We come to eat and be nourished by our mothers, by our fathers, so that we can go out, be rejuvenated, be replenished, and go out and serve and love one another. So this is the feminine Mass. It's been made abundantly clear from my ancestors, my guides, the saints, and further research that the present aim of my work is to unwire our subconscious alignments to male worship of sacrificing blood only, and rewire our subconscious to honor the life-giving source blood of women. We are to honor all the universal truth of exchange, that life feeds on life. So there is a masculine life-giving source that will make more sense once we understand the origins of our very being from the blood sacrifice of our mothers. So we're going to save that for another talk, but the hint is it's the divine spark. So piece by piece, we will put this puzzle back together and give birth to a new world of unity and interconnectedness that honors men, women, children, and all of life and all of that what we co-create. This is a utopian way, but it's from this utopian map that we can build these ceremonies to help us retune I like to call our bodies our instruments, retune our instruments when we get out of tune. So next week, I will be talking about the creation process of the truffle, the tuber that lives in a symbiotic relationship with the host tree, with its mother host tree. which I also think it's beautiful because she is of a tree. So it's really, really comes around full circle on my altar. And I didn't plan this out. It just came around that way. So the relationship between the host tree and the truffle illuminates and brings clarity to our human relationship with our mothers, and why we built all religions based on honoring this relationship. So the origin of all religions is trying to understand and piece together our relationship with our mother, who is the portal of life here on earth. So we're going to talk about how the relationship between a truffle and its mother tree host illuminates so much knowledge about how we come into this world. It's very fascinating. So I look forward to sharing that with you next week. Thanks, guys.